Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. I got a great guest for you today. This is going to be something inspiring. This is going to be something that, you know what, you're going to want to go over to his podcast and listen as well. This gentleman, he's a vice president of business development and marketing at Morgan Franklin Consulting, but that's not really even the cusp of who he is, because he has this great podcast called Everybody Pulls the Tarp. Andrew Moses, it's great to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, Fireman Rob. It's great to be here.
Oh, we met, and ever since then, I've been listening to your podcast. Just a cool idea. And probably everybody's thinking right now, what does it mean everybody pulls the tarp?
Well, I am happy to share, Fireman Rob. So everybody pulls the tarp is a mindset that I live by. And it's based on a philosophy that I have that you achieve maximum success and maximum happiness by doing the unexpected, contributing in ways outside the boundaries of what's expected of you and what your job descriptions are. And everybody pulls the tarp got instilled in me about 16, 17 years ago. My first internship while I was in college, I had an internship in minor league baseball. I was working for a minor league baseball team. I wanted to learn the front office and the business side of sports. And I arrive on the first day. They say, Andrew, it's great to have you here. But tomorrow, bring a pair of old clothes, put them in the locker room, and be ready to pull the tarp on and off the field with the grounds crew when it rains. Right? That was my reaction. I said, are you kidding? Is this a joke? And they said, no, Andrew, let us tell you something about minor league baseball. The field is the same size as the major leagues, right? I said, yes. They said, the grass is the same as the major leagues, right? I said, yes. They said, we have rain here just like the major leagues, right? I said, yes. And they said, Andrew, the difference is in minor league baseball, we may have a grounds crew of 5, 6, 7 people. The big leagues might have a grounds crew of 20 people. So down here in the minor leagues, everybody from CEO, chief marketing officer, head of ticket sales to you, Andrew, the new intern, are going to help pull the tarp on and off the field. So I did that summer, probably 15, 20 times. And it is harder than it looks, Fireman Rob. I mean, it's not as hard as walking around a racetrack, for 24 straight hours with fireman gear, but it is hard.
And, I can imagine.
It is hard. And it requires, communication, coordination, strength, resiliency, because the wind picks up and the rain really is coming down, and the crowd's staring at you, and they're booing if you can't get it on the field fast enough, because that will put the game in jeopardy. So throughout my career, and I'll kind of wrap up this initial story here, but throughout my career, as I started to grow and develop as a professional, and I began to see areas of my life where I was having success, and people who I was hiring that were successful, and people that I enjoyed working with, I began to realize it was these people that I began to call myself, the tarp pullers, people who were willing to do, whatever it took to contribute, regardless of what their job description said, regardless of what they thought was expected of them. They did what the team, the organization, the community needed to help everyone be successful. So since then, I always say, hey, everybody pulls the tarp, and on the podcast, that's what we explore.
I love it, because it's everybody from, you've talked to Olympians, you've talked to pro athletes, to elite coaches, authors. It's a wide gamut, and I love the analogy of everybody from the CEO all the way down to that grounds crew are working in common theme to get an objective done. So how do you correlate that into business? Because I think that's one big thing is like, that's why I love your message, is because it actually correlates so perfectly. How do you see that as somebody taking your analogy and putting it into their business?
I think when it comes to it applies, the philosophy applies to all aspects of life, but in business, right? It's really about, everybody comes to an organization with a title. People are obsessed with titles these days, right? They're obsessed with whatever their role is, their title is. You know, the world has become, business has become very hierarchical in nature, and what I believe, you know, is the everybody pulls the tarp mindset is applicable in business, because it doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what your job description is. There are things each day, each week, each month needed to move the organization forward, and everybody needs to contribute. And if everybody stays in their individual silos and just follows the letter of the laws as their job description says, I think the company stands to be less successful than if everybody were to look on a case-by-case basis and say, what is necessary to move this organization forward? You know, I love when you work for a company and you see the CEO making photocopies, right? Not just handing
yes.
off to an assistant to go do it. Now, there may be a time and a place when it's perfectly, you know, okay to leverage your time and delegate and things like that. But if it needs to be done, it needs to be done, right? So that's a little thing, you know, for example, that I think is important. It also applies in customer and client service. So regardless of whether, you know, you're in the restaurant business or the hospitality business or professional services, an attorney, an accountant, you want to be in a position where you're over delivering on what the expectations are, right?
So true.
Because when you over deliver, you know, it's scientifically proven that when you over deliver and someone is surprised, it elicits a chemical reaction in the brain that creates happiness and creates clarity and enthusiasm. And
right.
That's where I think you make a difference with your customers and clients, because you're creating these experiences where they say, whoa, you know, they've delivered far beyond what my expectations were because they were willing to do it. I'll give you another example. You know, our FedEx delivery driver, you know, she when she delivers a package to our house, if I haven't gone out and gotten the newspaper yet and it's sitting on the driveway, she brings it up to the front door and sets it atop the packages. Every time it happens, it brings the biggest smile to my face. And I think so fondly of that FedEx delivery driver. So that approach can be applied to any business, right? You know, if you're in a restaurant and you see something amiss, pick it up. If you're, you know, if you work in Disneyland and you see something that's not working, you know, fix it. Going back to minor league baseball, when I worked in minor league baseball, if I saw a little kid who tried to catch a foul ball but just missed, I would go down to the locker room, get a new ball, muddy it up, and bring it up to the kid because I wanted him to, you know, have that unique experience. So I think it applies to all aspects of business, both in terms of leadership, teamwork, and how the organization moves forward, but and also how the organization serves its customers.
And I love it because you put it in the terms of the little things that actually make the bigger thing happen. So now kind of going back into the idea of pulling the tarp, what are all the little things? Because I can imagine there's epic fails all the time and somebody gets stranded underneath the tarp. And it's a perfect analogy for business because, you know, there's a lot of people that get run over by the machine that is the end product. So how does that correlate the little things of when you are pulling a tarp? And I want to hear an epic fail story if you have one of you pulling the tarp, but how do those little things correlate to the bigger picture?
So there are a lot, Fireman Rob, and you know, fortunately that summer I didn't have one of those epic failures that ended up on YouTube or SportsCenter, but there are many.
Don't lie.
I don't know, maybe, but anyways, you know, there are a lot of, and I'll talk about one that happened. I think it was last summer, that was very, very well publicized. But I think when you're thinking about pulling the tarp, and especially in that situation, I think it's really akin to what a lot of organizations deal with for a couple of reasons. First, in our world, right, there were about 20 of us pulling the tarp. 5 or 6 were expert groundskeepers. So you had this gap in education and training, right? You had 5 or 6 people that knew exactly what they needed to do and had done it hundreds, if not thousands of times. And then you had all these others that were somewhat novices, right? And were learning on the job. So I think that's something that you see a lot in business, right? There's, in any organization, there are people with more experience. They have the requisite training, and then there are people that they have to communicate with and educate and bring along for the ride. And it doesn't matter how well those 5 or 6 do. If the whole group doesn't understand what needs to be done and isn't on the same sheet of music, you're going to have challenges. So I think that's one. Then it's one of these things that's not a static situation. So when you're pulling it, right, you're releasing it from the way it's wrapped up on the side of the field, and it depends how it got wrapped up the day or night before, the last time it was rolled up. Was it rolled up really nicely? Was it kind of rolled up in a disorganized way? That's going to impact how it comes out, and whether you're set up for success or not. You have to pivot, you have to adjust, you have to change course. And then, of course, there's the elements, right? So you could have it all planned out exactly how you want to do it. You practice it on a sunny day and you have it down pat. And then the wind starts to blow, east to west, west to east. You have no idea what's going to happen, and you've got to adapt. Again, something that businesses, teams, and organizations always need to deal with. And then I think it's also about remaining positive, right? With the tarp pulling, you'd get that tarp on the field, and then the sun would come out, and then you'd pull the tarp off the field, and then the umpires would say, "Here comes the rain again. Get it back out there." So you have to stay positive and resilient and focused on the task at hand. And one final thing I think is a great parallel with any business or organization is I think the tarp pulling and what the grounds crew does, and what I got to experience working that one summer in minor league baseball, is, again, very similar to what a lot of people in organizations need to think about. And that's, even the little things make a big impact. So, okay, nobody was buying tickets that day to see me roll a tarp on and off the field. They were paying to see minor league ball players who might play in the major leagues one day. They were hoping to have a good hot dog and some beers with their family and friends.
Right.
But if I don't do my part, and if the 20 of us who are pulling the tarp don't do our part, the rest of the product falls apart. There's no game. There's puddles all over the field. The field isn't playable, and nothing happens. So I always try to think about, okay, this is somewhat insignificant in the scheme of things, but this is an important piece of the equation. And I think that's a lot of times what people fall into in business or in any organization is, if I shirk my duties today, or if I don't show up, or if I give it 50%, it's not going to matter because I'm not the main attraction. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth, because if all the things don't go into the appropriate sequence and at the appropriate time, it's not going to be successful for anybody.
God, I love that. All this from a tarp. That is unbelievable. Like all these analogies. I love this. And the cool part, like as I am looking at it and going through your bio of, you look at everybody pulling the tarp, everybody's doing it for a greater purpose. And like you were saying, is so that those athletes can play. You're not only doing these podcasts, but in 2007, you started something because you believed in the generation to be able to create something bigger. And you were the co-founder of Autism Speaks U. Tell me more about that.
Sure. Well, it was a really, really, exciting time and experience putting together Autism Speaks U. And back in the early 2000s, I was in college, and me and a fraternity brother wanted to put together a fundraiser in the community. We wanted to do something that really gave back. I went to Penn State, like you and I have talked about, Fireman Rob, and don't hold that against me. I know you're a Wisconsin fan.
Oh, sorry. I should be more professional.
Yeah. Well, no, that's all right. That's all right. Well, anyways, we wanted to, for those folks who haven't been to Penn State or State College and Penn State are really intertwined. The university community sits in this great town of, right next to this great town of State College, and it's really kind of one and the same and unified. We wanted to do an off-campus event that engaged the community in a cause that was really, really important to that community. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of awareness and fundraising going on for autism. And we got connected with a great organization. And we started to put on these fundraisers in town. We did it for 2 years. And what we started to see was that just like, when college students go off to, when someone goes off to college, they have an opportunity in many instances to make consumer and behavioral decisions on their own for the first time in many cases, right? Like when I grew up, my parents decided whether we had Coke or Pepsi at the grocery store. When I went to college, I went to the convenience store, the grocery store, and decided whether I had Coke or Pepsi. So me and my friend who we were putting on these fundraisers, we said, well, wait a minute. What if we make philanthropy and giving and community service something that's ingrained in someone while they're in college, and then in turn, you have a kind of a customer for life, right? So we thought that there was, beyond just giving back to the community, there was an opportunity to create a platform. So what we did was we paired up with Autism Speaks, which is, one of the world's largest, autism awareness, advocacy, and fundraising organizations. And we built this Autism Speaks University platform. And essentially what we did was we created events and programs in a box and went from university to university trying to get college students to engage and support these events and put on events in their own town. And what we did this for 12 years, long after we had graduated college. We came on as consultants to the Autism Speaks Foundation and helped facilitate these things. And it was so powerful to go into a college community and see students, who hadn't necessarily been involved in any philanthropic endeavors before, see the power of that. And all I can hope is that they've graduated from college, and philanthropy and community service is a part of them forever. That's the hope.
I love it because it's about being part of something bigger. And not only do you show that through your Everybody Pulls the Tarp podcast, but you show it through your actions. And in a world that is a lot of people talking about a lot of different things, it's cool to see somebody like you, Andrew, who's actually showing through their actions over the years, not just one time, that the possible is possible because of that positive movement and positive action. Now you are a New York Mets fan, is that correct?
I am, and I was a little young to remember the '86 World Series, so I'm still anxiously waiting a World Series parade.
Have you put in the resume to be on the tarp crew at the Mets place?
I have not, but that's a great idea. That's a great idea.
I think you should ask them. You could go do that motivational speech, make sure that they understand that they can win, the World Series, but then at the same time, you're pulling the tarp for them.
That's right. That's right. Well, if they had me pulling the tarp, maybe they'd have some more success the last couple of years.
That's what I'm thinking. So going back to your podcast, Everybody Pulls the Tarp. People can hear it on all the different platforms. What is one of your favorite, and I'm sure you've gotten this question before, what is one of your favorite people that you've had on there that their message really, truly resonated with you?
Well, I'll give, if it's okay, Fireman Rob, I'll give you two examples. I think
that's quite all right. That's quite.
So I recently interviewed Tessa Virtue. Tessa is the most decorated Olympic figure skater of all time. She's a 3-time gold medalist in the ice dance competition, and her partner, ice dance partner Scott Moyer, have set all kinds of records. And when she was on the show, what she shared with me was, she said, "Hey, Andrew, there were 2 of us on the podium getting gold medals, all those gold medals. But in the time leading up to the Olympics, there were about 14 people working behind the scenes to help us be successful."
Wow.
And she said, choreographers, sports psychologists, nutritionists, costume designers, you name it, skating coaches, right? There's all kinds of folks that are involved. And and she credits all of them with their success. And she doesn't believe that her and her ice dance partner would have been as successful as they were, even remotely as successful, without all those people. So I thought that was really powerful, because so often we see performers, high performers, and we have no idea the people that are behind the curtain helping them be successful. The other example that that I always thought about is University of Florida head coach Mary Wise. She's a 15-time SEC Coach of the Year. She coaches women's volleyball, and she told me that something she's done almost her whole career is when the team pulls up to a hotel on the road, She gets off the bus and she helps unload the luggage off the bus. And
oh, wow.
It's a little thing that she's just done naturally her whole career. But when I started asking her about her contributions outside the boundaries of her job description, she said, Andrew, I never thought about it this way, but I think it sets this incredible tone that if I'm willing to do this, everybody can do a little something to help us be successful. And at the end of the day, she said me helping unload the luggage gets the team. It seems like a little thing, but it gets the team into the hotel faster, gets the players to bed faster. They're better rested in the morning, and we're ready to attack practice and attack the game that evening. So it's a little thing that makes a big difference. So I could give an example, Fireman Rob, from every one of the episodes that just leaves me in awe, because I'm so inspired by these little things that make a big difference. But those are two I think that are particularly powerful.
I love that. If that hasn't wet your whistle to go over and listen to everybody pulls the tarp, I don't know what will. That's awesome. And, I think the biggest thing for me when I look at what you're doing and the way that you're going through it, from all ages, from people who are retired to people who are working to professional athletes to kids, what is the one takeaway from your everybody pulls the tarp? What is that one little nugget that a kid or an adult or, even somebody like myself who's almost in the geriatric range can take away and use each day?
I think the one thing that I always want people to take away is that it really just comes down to being giving, right? If you approach every situation with the mindset that you are going to give more than you're going to take, that you're going to help more than you're going to receive, that you're setting yourself up to be what I call a tarp puller, right? You're setting yourself up to bring joy, happiness, and positive energy to others, to individuals, to organizations that you're involved with, to communities that you support. And then that joy and energy and positivity is going to come back your way and make you feel really good. So you're going to then can contribute more. So it becomes this cycle. Right. But at the end of the day, you just have to sit down and say, okay, what's something that somebody doesn't expect me to do and do it. And here are the things that are my job responsibility, whether it's your job as whether what your responsibilities are as a employee, whether it's your responsibilities as a parent, as a friend. This is what's expected of me, and you have to do those things, right? You can't. Nobody should listen to this podcast and say, Andrew Moses said, I don't have to do what's in my job description. I just need to do all these other things. You've got it. Your job description is the table stakes. Now it's about going to do something above and beyond. So again, I would leave people with the mindset that it's going to make others feel good, and it's going to, in return, make you feel good. And it's going to be this vicious cycle, or this positive cycle, I should say, not a vicious cycle, a positive cycle of great energy.
Well, you could say it's viciously positive.
Viciously positive.
It's your new phrase. Well, Andrew, I can't thank you enough for being on today. I always end my podcast the same way. I ask this, for season 2, we've got brand new questions, and I don't give them to you just for the fact that I like to make people feel like they're under the tarp. So here's the first question. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. What would be one big suggestion or advice that you would tell your 18-year-old self?
I would tell my 18-year-old self to not be afraid to ask others for advice.
I love it. All right, here's the next one. With all the people and the hard times that everybody's going through right now, I've been asking people, what are 2 daily habits, whether it's in the morning or in the nighttime, that you would suggest that they incorporate into their lives to start living forward?
I've been trying to do 2 things, always, but especially right now. One is trying to, instead of using the word have, using the word get. So instead of I have to work from home because of the pandemic, I say I get to work from home.
Love it.
And what that's a mindset shift, right? Or instead of I have to work out today, I get to work out today. Or I have to park so far from the store. Instead, I would say I get to park so far from the store, because there's positives in all of those in all of those situations, right? Working from home enables me to spend more time with my kids and be home for dinner more. Parking farther from the store, I'm grateful that I have the ability to walk, and that, that 30 seconds will give me some peace and quiet and some time to think, right? So get over, have. And again, it for me, it's just coming back down to, I try and see the positive in every situation, which is really that get, have, approach there.
I love that. That's I'm using that now. Here's the last one, and this is going to be interesting because it's across the board. We get so many different answers. So if you could have coffee with 3 people that can be deceased or alive at a firehouse table, meaning nothing is off the table to talk about, who would it be and why?
Wow. Fireman Rob, that is a fantastic question. So 3 people. I think I would. I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. I've always wanted to sit down with Bruce Springsteen and not talk about his songs, as a fan. I've always wanted to sit down and talk with Bruce Springsteen about his creative process and how he goes about his business, creating such consistently successful music for so long. So he would certainly be one. And then the other 2 slots, I would like to put 2 former presidents. I don't care which former presidents they are. I'd like 2 former presidents, one from each party. And
I love it.
and I love to be part of just healthy debate. And I like to see all perspectives on issues and see how people make arguments in a positive way. So I think that would be interesting.
I love it. The boss and 2 presidents.
And they would all, the 2 presidents would call him the boss.
They would have to. I mean, it's like, yeah, it just makes sense. Andrew, it's been such an honor to have you on here. If you haven't yet, go and subscribe to Everybody Pulls the Tarp podcast. You're going to enjoy it. Andrew, thanks again for joining us.
Fireman Rob, I have to just take a moment here to thank you for having me. The work that you do is so inspiring. And is making has and continues to make such a difference. It's an absolute honor to spend some time with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And our listeners got a lot of great nuggets today. So thank you again. And thanks for joining us on Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.